The data grid manages state information in a metadata catalog. The virtualization of a collection requires the data grid to manage all of the associated state information persistently, independent of the choice of storage technology. The state information is used to track the results of all operations performed within the data grid. Information is maintained about users, such as username, organization and groups, home directory. Files, such as file name, size, modification date, creation date, and location. Collection, such as collection name, parent collection. Storage, such as storage name, location, and type. Metadata, such as name, value, units, creation date, modification date. And policies, such as name and version. The information is stored in tables in the metadata catalog. Separate tables are created for each type of object. Queries can be done on information stored in each table. A jQuery interface supports queries that span multiple tables. The information is updated automatically each time an operation is performed on any of the servers connected by the data grid. This provides consistent management of distributed files. Queries on state information provide access to metadata attributes that are managed by the data grid. The attribute names associated with user information are user group ID, an internal identifier for a user group or object ID, user ID, an internal identifier for a user info, information such as email, address, telephone number, user name, the user or user group name, user type, the user role such as RODS user or RODS admin, and user zone, the home data grid for the user. There are several caveats about users. The complete specification of a user requires both the username and the user zone in the form username pound user zone. Every user has an associated user group with the same name. The public username is a user group that contains all the persons with accounts in the data grid. The anonymous username is a user group which allows access by persons who do not have a data grid account. The attribute names associated with storage resources are resource ID, an internal identifier for storage resources, resource loc, the host address of the storage resource name, a logical name for the storage resource type name, the type of storage resource. Valid types include Unix file system, Windows file system, HPSS file system, which is a tape archive, S3 for Amazon S3 Cloud, MSS Universal Driver, which is a driver for mass storage, database for an object relational database, MSO for a microservice object, and OpenDAP for a network data access protocol. The attribute names associated with collections are call ID, the collection internal identifier, call name, the collection name, call parent name, the name of the parent collection. The attribute names associated with quotas are quota over, a positive value if you are over your quota measured in bytes, quota usage, storage usage in bytes, quota usage user ID, identifier of the user with the quota usage, quota user ID, identifier of the user with the quota. Note that the quota is equal to quota usage minus quota over. The attribute names associated with files are data checksum, the checksum of the file, either MD5 or SHA-256, data call ID, the parent collection internal identifier, data create time, the date the file was created in seconds since January 1st, 1970, data expiry, an expiration date in seconds since January 1st, 1970, data ID, an internal identifier for a file, data modify time, modification time in seconds since January 1st, 1970, data name, name of the file, data path, physical path name on the storage system, data REPL number, the file replica number, the initial copy is number 0, data resource name, the storage resource name for the file, data size of the file in bytes, data type name, the data format type. The attribute names associated with access controls are defined in a triple, the object, the access control, and the user. Call access call ID is a collection identifier that is being controlled. Call access type is the identifier for the type of access. Call access user ID is the identifier for the user whose access is controlled. Similar attributes are used for data. Data access data ID is the file identifier that is being controlled. Data access type is the identifier for the type of access. Data access user ID is the identifier for the user whose access is controlled. Token name is used to define the type of access. Token ID is the identifier for the token name. The type of access read, write, execute, own is found through queries on the access type token namespace for a token name that corresponds to the token ID equal to the call access type or data access type. The attribute names associated with metadata for files are metadata adder ID, the internal metadata identifier, metadata adder name, the metadata attribute name, metadata adder units, metadata attribute units or comment field, metadata adder value, metadata attribute value, metadata create time, the metadata creation time, metadata modify time, the metadata modification time. Metadata attributes can be defined for collections, users, and resources by replacing the characters data with RESC for storage resource, COLL for collection, USER for username. Thus, the attribute name for metadata associated with a user would be meta user adder name. Take 7 minutes to complete exercise 17. Identify the persistent state attributes that are needed to describe file size, parent collection, expiration date, and creation date. Please load a paragraph into the lifetime library in the sub-collection class INLS 624 by the end of today's class. Please complete homework assignment number 3 and turn in on Monday of next week. Identify persistent state attributes that are needed for your 10 requirements. Correlate the persistent state attributes to each of the 10 requirements. Note that a given persistent state attribute may be needed by multiple requirements. Examples of persistent state for NSF data management plans are in Chapter 7 of the Policy Templates Workbook.